Right, today we're going to talk about the third and the last DC Universe original show. Not to do with the CW, but DC Universe show. And this is Swamp Thing. I'm fairly new to the DC kind of stuff. I've only just recently started reading the comics actually, like, fully. I've only started like getting into the shows and the films. I was into the CW until like Arrow season 3, and it all got a bit, a bit too out there, a bit too wacky, and a bit too, crowded. And then I got into these shows, and they're essentially what the CW should be. And Swamp Thing is a very competent show. The best thing I can say about their show is that it's competently made. It has a start, a finish, and it has a B plot, and it has an A plot. But it's so average. It's so like middle of the road horror kind of. It's not bad. It's not bad. Like, the horror stuff is scary. It has quite good CGI for a TV show. It looks good. It looks murky. It looks barren, and for some of it doesn't really matter that Swamp Thing just looks like a guy in a suit, because it works for the kind of what it's going for. And there is a B plot with this guy called Daniel, who ends up becoming the Blue Devil, who is, of all the characters that I thought would appear in a live action form through a TV show or a movie, Blue fucking Devil was not one of them. No, sorry. Have you ever heard of Blue Devil? Who the fuck is Blue Devil? The only reason I know about Blue Devil is because in my school library there were two graphic novels, one of which was Batman the Brave and the Bold. The other was Blue Devil. That is the only reason that I know who Blue Devil is. And in this show, he is in it for 5 seconds. He has like one cool action sequence that would be cool if we saw it, but all we see is like, we have one shot of him, and we have one shot of like his face, and yeah, it seems like a lot of the characters in this show have like this thing. Both Swamp Thing and Blue Devil have this thing where when they're seen, they just run. They just don't want to be seen by who their friends would be. I don't want to go too much into the plot of this because there is none. It's just Swamp Thing. He's in the swamp. He's there, and he kills a lot of people, and there's a lot of violence. It's very gruesome. And there's this other scientist, and he eats a bit of Swamp Thing, and he goes a bit mental chicken oriental, and you know, we all, then there's a fight at the end. There's not really a fight at the end. There's kind of these soldier guys that go into the swamp and then they get killed by Swamp Thing. But the whole thing, what my main gripe with this show is, it's called Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is barely in the show. He's like Alec Holland is a secondary character in like the first episode. He's like in the background, and the main character's Abby Arcane, who like is the love interest for Swamp Thing throughout the show. And as we progress through the show, like in the last 2 episodes, Swamp Thing is a big part of the show. Like the show centers around him, but he doesn't really show up a lot. He doesn't really have any cool fight scenes. Like when I said that episode threes of superhero shows always have a cool fight scene, this one has a fight scene, but it's not cool. It's just kind of there, and I understand why, because this show isn't an action adventure superhero show in the same way that something like Titans is, something like Doom Patrol was. This is more along the lines of that supernatural horror, the existential thriller kind of thing, and it does become more supernatural as the plot goes forward, but it is very much more a horror story. It's definitely a horror show, and it's not very well done horror. It's just kind of very average, and the storytelling is very average, and I only really like it because it has one character in it that I like didn't expect to show up in anything. And I hope there's a season 2. I heard that apparently they've spent a bit too much money on the show, and that it got cancelled after like its first episode. But I really hope that there was enough feedback from this show for people to say, right, yeah, we understand that people want to see the plot go forward, because it does end very abruptly. It's basically said, yeah, we're setting up a second season. We're setting up more stuff. There's going to be more stuff in the pipeline. We have a story to tell, but I don't know if when they go forward it will be more the standard superhero action stuff, or it would be more like full-on horror again, like this was. And I hope it's standard superhero action stuff, because it kind of is better when it embraces that. Like I don't like the idea of having a superhero show which doesn't show the fights. Like every time there's about to be an action sequence, it just pans away to just people talking, and then maybe, oh, there's scares. Oh, I don't care about that. What I care about is seeing the cool action sequences, and the budget for this show must have been high, and it must have been that they didn't that they spent too much money on Swamp Thing and Blue Devil, and like a few other things, that I don't think that they left themselves enough money to do fight scenes, so they just like skip over them. There's like one fight scene, and that's it, and that's in the last episode, and everything else, it's like every time there's about to be some action, it just pans away to something else, and then the next scene that we see the character that was about to be in a fight, the fight's already done. And it's quite annoying. It's very like it's very annoying. I don't like that, especially in a superhero show. Like a superhero show, the main point of why people love superheroes is because it's just bat out nonsense fun. Like, and it's bat out nonsense fighting. It's just people punching each other, and this show takes away from that, and the stuff that it's trying to do, it doesn't do well. I wouldn't care about the lack of action if the horror was good, if it was genuinely quite frightening, and it just isn't. It just isn't like scary enough for it to. The horror isn't done well enough for it to really make sense. Like, I understand Swamp Thing isn't an action-based character. I understand that he is like very much in the depths of horror, even in his comics. There is a lot of like that kind of body horror stuff, but this show kind of takes it to the nth degree. It's either at the nth degree where it just becomes silly and slapstick, or it's not, or it's too subtle that it doesn't really have any, like, it doesn't have any effect on the viewer. The only thing, but the reason why I enjoy the show, I enjoyed bits of the show, was because I liked the characters, I liked the characterization of Swamp Thing, I liked seeing the characters interact. The villain was a bit meh, and some of the decisions made were a bit okay. I don't understand how you got to that conclusion, and there's a lot of stuff that kind of annoyed me about just the plot of the show. But in general, the actual writing is good. All the stuff with Blue Devil and like leading up to that is good. All the scenes with Swamp Thing are good, and the way that they made Swamp Thing look good throughout the whole of the show, I enjoyed that. For some scenes, it did look like a guy in a suit. It did look very 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I don't mind that, to be honest. It's Swamp Thing. I don't care if it looks like an 80s B movie. Like, it's Swamp Thing. Like, I don't think anyone cares enough about the character to act. Well, maybe when Alan Moore was writing him, but that was like in the 80s. Who now cares enough about Swamp Thing that they want him to be really, really well done, especially in a show. If this was like Justice League Dark, like a live action movie with Swamp Thing in it, yeah, I would understand if you were a bit miffed about Swamp Thing looking like a guy in a suit. I'd understand that, but this, I don't have a problem with it. He looks good enough to service, and when he is like growing other parts of his body, it looks good. But my main problem with the show is that as a show, as a horror, it doesn't succeed in being a good horror, and I didn't feel myself connecting with many of the side characters apart from Daniel, who was Blue Devil, or even like Madame Xanadu. Madame Xanadu makes an appearance in this. She's kind of fun, I guess, and the Phantom Stranger's in this as well. He's fun as well, because they play him off more as like comic relief, and they're like, or I'm gonna give you some stuff, and it's up to you if you want to get involved. I can't. Why can't you? I can't. Or, why can't you? 'Cause I can't. It's like, yeah. Oh, I enjoyed this show, and I was very frustrated by this show at the end of it, because it doesn't wrap up all of the plot threads. And with that being said, that would be less annoying if the final episode wasn't called Loose Ends and it leaves so many. Maybe that's just a big pun that a show called Swamp Thing, which is about plants, leaves a lot of loose ends. You know, maybe that's a big dad joke. But anyway, see you guys in the next video. That's my kind of sum up of Swamp Thing. I enjoyed the show. I got some fun out of it. Again, we saw a character in this that I saw a character in this that I never expected to see in any form of media outside of the comics. So yeah, there's that. It gives you a character that you're never gonna see ever again, I don't think. So I enjoyed this. I got a lot out of it, and also I was really frustrated by a lot of the things in this, and it doesn't really work. And at the end of the day, it's not actually that good, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. So yeah, if you have seen Swamp Thing, if you enjoyed Swamp Thing, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hit this video with a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, all that lovely good stuff, and go watch all my other videos, because why not? You're on the channel now, you might as well. See you guys in the next video. Peace.